Shalom, peace. It's your brother Gabar, and this is Intelligent Hebrew. Today's lesson is open-minded. One of my close loved ones was talking to me about he ran into some Israelites or some brothers that he was cool with, came into the truth. He said, "Man, they trying to force it, and they so aggressive in their speech, you know." And he was referring to me like, "Man, maybe they should talk to you because you don't talk like that." I'm a little bit more laid back, I admit, but the doctrine or the words or the scriptures that we use are probably the exact same thing. Um, but he said something that made me be like, I need to do a lesson on that. I need to address that. And that is, he said, well, because I'm open minded. And so I don't really study with nobody. And so I do this or I teach like that and I learn like this or I learn like that. But open-minded meaning he felt like he can get some from the Muslim, he can get some from the Christian, he can get some from us, he can get some from them, and he's putting together things on his own in his own way what works best for him. And I know a lot of people, especially us, our own people, they do that. And that is drinking of the cup of Babylon means confusion, and you're drinking a big old glass of confusion when you do stuff like that, right? Because a lot of these spiritualities have contradicting ways, contradicting beliefs. Simple and plain. Let's jump into it. Second Ezra chapter 7, I'm starting at verse 6. Because really what we need to understand is if some people say, oh, well, it's many different paths, but they're all going the same way. Well, I don't know about that. Because if you're into Hinduism, then you believe in a bunch of different gods. And the Most High said it's only one. Uh, if you believe in different things like Buddhism, then you might believe that everyone can be enlightened and come into a sense of heaven, and that's contrary to the scripture because the Most High said only 2/3 that 2/3 of the people not going to accept it, and that many are called and few are chosen. Right? If you believe in Catholicism, then you pray to Saint this, Saint that, Saint this, Saint that, Saint this, Saint that, Saint. And the Most High said, nope, I'm the only one. And he said that the Israelites are the saint. He didn't say that those other people are the saints. So all these different beliefs, and none of it really goes. Like, they don't worship, they don't keep the Sabbath day, they don't keep the holy days. They don't even know about the holy days a lot of the time. So these are things that these other religions, if you believe that you following all these different religions but to the same path, man, that's contrary to what the Most High say. Let's get that. Let's go to Second Ezra chapter 7, some sort of verse 6. He says, there's also another thing. A city is builded and set upon a broad field and is full of good things. The city represents the kingdom of heaven. The entrance thereof is narrow and is set in a dangerous place to fall, like as if there were a fire on the right hand and on the left a deep water. So he's saying, man, it's a narrow path, and on one side it's an ocean, deep waters, and on the other side it's just fire, just flames of fire, right? So we understand if you fall on one side, you get burnt to death. If you fall on the other side, you're gonna drown to death. I don't even know how you say it, but y'all know what I'm saying. And verse 8, and only one path between them both. I'm gonna read that again. And only one path between them both. So there's not many different roads and paths to the Most High and to the kingdom. It's only one path, and that path has to be pure and righteous. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be times when it doesn't make sense. It's going to be times when you got to have faith. It's going to be times when you're tired. But that one path is the one path that you got to go, right? We all been somewhere where it's a one-way street. Simple and plain. There's no way around it. You got to go down this one way. This is the street that goes that way, and that's the street that you got to go on to get to where you're trying to go. So he's saying that this is a one-way street. And Second Ezra chapter 7, verse 8, and one. Let me start at verse 7. Let me start at verse 6 again, let it flow. And there's also another thing, a city, which is the kingdom of heaven, is builded and set upon a broad field. The field is broad, and it is full of good things, right? The entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in a dangerous place to fall, like as if there were a fire on the right hand, and on the left a deep water, and only one path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. So only one person at a time can go down this one narrow path. So you can't carry somebody. You can't. Hey, if moms don't want to hear it, you can't carry mom. If your wife don't want to hear it, you can't carry your wife. They got to do this on their own, is what the scriptures is saying. Verse 9, if this city now were given into a man for an inheritance, if he never shall pass the danger set before it, how shall we receive this inheritance? Drop down to verse 20. Verse 20, for there be many that perish in this life because they despise the law of God that is set before them. And this is the problem. We despise that law. And that law is that straight and narrow path. We don't want to hear the commandments of God. That is the straight and narrow path, right? Let me get this for y'all real quick. So it says, for there be many that perish in this life because they despise the law. When you say perish, that means suffer. They suffer in this life because they despise the law of God that is set before them. And we are currently suffering. We're currently oppressed. We've been oppressed since before slavery, but we were oppressed. Starting our real and last oppression really started with the whole slavery and all of that, right? And it's because we despise the laws of the Most High. When you read in the Bible, you'll find where we broke the commandments over and over again. And every time we broke the commandments, we began to be oppressed by other people. When we worship other gods, when we didn't obey his laws, when we didn't keep the commandments, we began to be oppressed by other people. And this is what it is saying. This is why it says perish in this life because they despise the law of God that is set before them. Watch this, verse 21. For God hath given straight commandments. Why do you think he's saying straight commandments? Why you think he's saying straight commandments? Because he already said that the path is narrow. This is the straight and narrow path, you guys. Right? In verse what? In verse 7. It's the straight and narrow path. Okay? So he says, for God hath given straight commandments, like straight and narrow, to such as came and what they should do to live. So this is how we're supposed to live. It's not a religion. It's just how we're supposed to live. And even as they came and what they should observe to avoid punishment, what we should pay attention to. That's what the word observe means. We should be observing the Sabbath. We should be observing the holy days. We should be observing the civil law. We should be observing the moral laws. We should be observing these things, paying attention to these things, right? Let's go to Judges chapter 17, verse 6. So I really think that I can kind of close the book on that, on being open-minded. We got to have a straight and narrow, and we got to stay on that straight and narrow so that way we can do what we need to do to get to where we want to go, which is the kingdom of heaven, which is paradise, right? So let's go to Judges 17 and 6. Watch what we ended up doing, though. The book of Judges, chapter 17, verse 6. In those days, there was no king in Israel. So we didn't have no main leadership. We didn't have no leadership at this time. There was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. That's where we're at right now to this day, 2024. We don't have no king. We don't have no righteous priesthood. We don't have nothing. We've been destroyed as a nation. And so all the things that made us, that provided us with leadership, we left those things. We left the Most High God, left his commandment, left his law. We don't have a king. We don't have a priesthood to bring us back to those commandments, right? So he says, what did we do? Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. That's Judges chapter 17, verse 6. And that's the problem, is we're all doing whatever we think is right. So we take a little bit from here. I'm going to take a little bit of understanding from Islam. I'm going to take a little bit of understanding from Christianity, of course. I'm going to take a little bit of Buddhism, the Ram Rio. I don't know how to say it. I don't care to say it. But this is the things that we want to do, because we don't want to follow the laws of the Most High. And this is why Second Ezra just told us that many have perished because they hated or despised the commandment of the Most High, right? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 29. And we're going to go to verse 18. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 18. Now, he said that, we didn't have no king, so every man did what he wanted to do and what was right in his own eyes. Watch this. Deuteronomy 29, verse 18. Lest there should be among you man or woman or family or tribe whose heart turn away this day to serve and go and serve the gods of these nations. And this is what we do when you take a little bit of Islam. You don't realize it, but you're serving the God of Islam. When you take a little bit from Buddhism, You don't realize it, but you're serving the God of Buddhism. You're serving the God of Hinduism when you take on that stuff. You're serving the God of Christianity when you believe that. Even though you may be like, I know Jesus is black. But some of y'all may say, what? I know we the Israelites. Yeah, well, guess what? If you're keeping Sunday service, if you're celebrating Christmas or Easter or whatever it is, guess what? You're serving the God of that belief. That's what happens when you do that. So he says, lest there should be among you man or woman or family or tribe whose heart turn away this day from the Lord our God to go and serve the gods of the nations, lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. These are things that rot. Gall and wormwood rot out the tree. It makes it no good, not useful. It destroys the tree from the inside out. Is what it is doing. Verse 19, and it shall come, and it come to pass when he hear the words of this curse, because when you read Deuteronomy 28, you find that because of our disobedience, we have a whole bunch of curses. And today we call them what? Generational curses. So we have all the generational curses upon us because because we weren't obedient to the covenant, to the contract, to the agreement that we made with the Most High. What was that agreement? That we would keep the Most High God's commandments and we would do his laws. That's the agreement. That's the contract. And since we're disobedient to that, we're currently under the curses. And part of that curse is being oppressed. Part of those curses was slavery. Part of those curses is I guess not being a financial stable, having stable finances or having money. That as a nation, we're the number one spenders, but we don't have no money as a nation, right? And so all of this is prophesied that these will be the curses that are going to be upon us, that we will have no military might, that our children will be taken from us, that we would build countries and homes, but we would be the second class citizens in those places. In some cases, we're not citizens at all, right? And all of this is recorded in Deuteronomy 28. Those are the curses that are upon us that this verse is talking about. And it says, let me read it for again, Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 19. And it come to pass when he hear the words of this curse, the curse that's written in Deuteronomy chapter 28, that he bless himself. Not that the Most High blessed him, but he blessed himself. How he blessed himself? Because he felt like, oh, well, you know what? I'm doing good for myself. I'm all right. I got a good job. I got a good house. I got a car, right? Or he felt like, you know what? My Jesus, right? Our people love to swear on name Jesus, but they're not paying attention to the actual Hamashiach or the Messiah that's recorded in this Bible. Their Jesus is contrary to him. So even Satan can bless you. When you read in Matthew 4, when Christ is being tempted, what happened? He said, man, I'll give you all these things if you bow down and worship me, right? Because that's how he gonna get you, right? So let's understand that just because you're doing well for yourself don't mean that Satan couldn't bless you. That's not what that means. He says, and it come to pass when he hear the words of the curse that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of mine heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. And if we've ever been drunk, boy, when you wake up the next morning, you are thirsty. So he's saying when you're thirsty, you're going to add drunkenness to that. That's called a hangover. You know what's going to come from that? You're going to throw up. You're going to be sick. Your head going to be spinning. You're going to have a headache, right? All of these things. And nobody wants that. Let's stay in Deuteronomy 29. And we're going to read down to verse 21. Verse 20, the Lord will not spare him. So the Most High ain't going to spare you when you do that. So don't be going out. You think being open-minded is good, but being open-minded, it's going to lead you astray. It's going to lead you all these down these different paths. And this is why you have confusion, right? The Lord will not spare him, but then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Lord shall blot out his name from under heaven. All the curses of what? Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 15 through 68. I just mentioned all of this, right? Verse 21, and the Lord shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes of Israel. So once Israel starts to getting it together, you're going to be separated from that. You're not going to be amongst the nation of Israel. You're going to be with the rest of the confused, wicked people, right? And the Lord shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the law. So understand that this is what's going to happen. Ain't no getting away from it. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. No, not Ecclesiastes. I'm sorry. I'm out of order right now, y'all. I'm sorry. Let's go to Deuteronomy 12. Stay in Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 12. Deuteronomy chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 28. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 28. Look at what it says. Observe and hear all these words which I command thee, that it may go well with thee. This is what the Most High is telling you. Observe to do all these words that I command you. The commandments is what he's saying. He's saying, observe and hear all the words of the commandments, that it may go well with thee. See, when we keep the commandments, things go good for us. Things will go well for us. The Most High will bless us. He will protect us. He will provide for us, right? That it may go well with thee and with thy children after thee forever, when thou do that which is good and right in the sight of the Lord. Romans chapter 7 and 12 tells you that the commandment is good and just, that the law is good and just. So when it says which is good and right in the sight of the Lord, so it's saying what the Most High sees as righteous, what the Most High sees as good is, and Romans 7 verse 12 says that the law and the commandment is good and just and holy. So this is what is good, and this is what's good and right in the sight of the Most High, the commandment. Drop down to verse 30. He says, take heed. So he's saying, be careful to thyself that thou be not snared by following them after that they be destroyed and before thee. Let me take it read from the top. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 30. Take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them after that they be destroyed from before thee. He's talking about the heathen nations, these other nations, the people who worship the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Christians, the Baptists, the Catholics, the Zoroastrians, the atheists, all of them. He's saying, be careful. Don't get caught up in their snare. Snare is a trap. He says, take heed to thyself. So be careful for yourself that thou be not caught in their trap. Thou be not snared by following them. Don't be following after them. Don't be taking a little bit from him and a little bit from there and a little bit from being open-minded, right? He says, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them after that they be destroyed from before thee, that thou inquire not after their gods. Well, how do they do it in Islam? How do they do it in Buddhism? How do the Hindus do it? Right? No, don't do that to yourself. Why? He says, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Even when you don't think that you're in that religion, but when you take a little piece of that and you start doing that, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to keep Ramadan. Oh no, I understand. I don't believe in Christianity, but I just do Christmas for the kids, right? You don't understand that you're worshiping their gods. You're not worshiping the God of the Bible. You're worshiping the God of the people of whatever religion Christmas comes from, whatever religion Ramadan comes from, or whatever the Buddhists do. That's what you're doing. You're worshiping that God. Watch verse 31. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God. So the God of this Bible don't want you to do that. So if it's not in this Bible, he don't want you to do that. Don't try to mix that with him. Don't take a piece of that and put that with him, right? Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God. For every abomination to the Lord which he hate have they done unto their gods. They've done all that stuff. They've done human sacrifice and bestiality and homosexuality and all that. They've done all that stuff. All this stuff is recorded in the Bible. You'll find it in there, right? He says, they have done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their city. They've offered their children in fire to their gods. Verse 32. What things soever I command you, observe to do it. So whatever the Most High commanded us to do, that's what we're supposed to be observing to do. We should be doing that. He says, thou shalt not add thereto. So don't add nothing to it, nor diminish from it. Don't take nothing from it either, right? Let's stay in this law, but not in Deuteronomy, let's go to Leviticus 18. Leviticus 18. We're going to read a bit out of that, actually. No, I'm not going to get I'm not going to get all of that, but I'm gonna touch on some things, right? It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, you so-called black people scattered to the four corners of the earth because of the transatlantic and Arab slave trade. You are the children of Israel. You're God's chosen people. You're his children, according to the Bible. It says, speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, I am the Lord your God. After the doings of the lands of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, ye shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whether I bring you, ye shall not do. Neither shall ye walk in the ordinances, in their ordinances. Ye shall do my judgments and keep mine ordinances. So don't walk under their ordinances. Don't walk the way they walk. Don't do the things they do. Don't take a little piece of their spirituality here and some of that spirituality there. No, he says, ye shall do my judgment and keep my ordinances to walk therein. I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes. That's the stipulations of how to work the commandments, right? And my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. It'll be your lifestyle. He shall live in them, and I am the Lord. I am the Lord. Right? Verse 6. None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him. Right? Why? Because they did this in these other nations. It was regular for them to marry their sister or their mother or their father or their, it was regular for them to do that kind of stuff. Right? Let's see. Drop down to what? I don't want to do all that. So I'm not going to get all of these things. Drop down to verse 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with mankind. We're in the same chapter. So he's saying no homosexuality because they did that kind of stuff. The Greeks did this. The Egyptians, I know a lot of brothers that are in the Kemet community don't want to admit to it, but it was actually part of their religious belief. One of the male gods had sex with another male god. That's just in their belief. And this is how that, and because of that, when you see your gods doing it, you feel like, okay, I'm doing the acts of the gods, right? So this is what they said. He says, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with mankind. It is an abomination. Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. We just read in Deuteronomy 12 where he said they did these things. Right, so he's showing you they lied, they married and had sex with their close relatives, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, right? That they did homosexuality, that they did what? Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to devour thyself. So no bestiality. They did bestiality, right? Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down, therefore unto it is confusion. This is what it is. It says, defile not yourself in any of these things, for in all these the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. Look at this. For all these abominations, this is Leviticus, we still in Leviticus 18, y'all. Leviticus 18, verse 27. For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. The land spew not you out. So if we did these things, we will be kicked out of our own land. And this is why we are kicked out of our own land, because we did some of these things. We probably did all of them, right? As it spewed out the nations that were before you. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, that if you sleep with your close to kin, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, right? If you commit homosexuality, if you commit bestiality, and listen, to get a complete understanding, I suggest y'all read Leviticus chapter 18. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the soul that commit them shall be cut off from among their people. Therefore, ye shall keep mine ordinance, because the Most High said, don't do none of that stuff. That ye commit not any of these abominable customs. Don't do these things which were committed before you, and that ye defile not yourselves therein. I am the Lord your God. We're not supposed to do the things that the other nations do. Don't take parts of their religions. Being open-minded is, we see it as being accepting to everything. Being open-minded means to hear someone's other side, to see the standpoint or point of view from someone in the argument or discussion. It doesn't mean to take different parts of people's religions and beliefs and to form their own. This is why he said that we're not supposed to do um, whatever we want in our own eyes, right? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews 10. I'm going to read verses 1 through 4. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, be continually make the comers thereunto perfect. So we understand that just because you follow the commandment don't make you perfect. No, it's more than just you doing the commandment. We got to do it with sincerity and gladness of heart, right? For when they would not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshipers once purged should have no more consciences of sin. So we have to understand that it's in our mind. Yes, keeping the commandments, but we have to have the spirit in our mind to do that. We got to do it in the right sense. But in those sacrifices have, verse 3, but in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sin every year. For it is not the possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sin. So that's not what that was about. That's why Christ came. He took away before y'all, some of y'all Christians tuning in, Christ did not say, don't keep the commandments. In fact, Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 tells you just the opposite. He says, don't think that I come to destroy the commandments. I did not come to destroy the commandments. I did not come to destroy the commandments. That's Matthew 5 and 17. So, but he came to do away with the sacrificial law because we were abusing it and didn't have understanding on it, right? So that's what that's about. Let's go to 2 Kings chapter 17. 2 Kings 17. Second Kings chapter 17. I'm going to start at verse 8. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 8. Look at what it says. I'm sorry, verse 7. And so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them out of the land of Egypt and from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. When we start dealing with these other religions, when we start taking a little bit from this religion, a little bit from that religion, and we think we being open-minded to all this other stuff, right? We're sinning against our God. Verse 8, and walked in the statutes of the heathen. We start walking the way they walk. We start doing with all the wrong things that they're doing because we feel like we're being open-minded. It's okay, right? No, it's not okay. Why? Whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel and the king of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord their God. They built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced cities. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and every green tree. So this is what we're doing when we do stuff like that. So let's see if I can get a visual of that for y'all. Perfect. Look at all those different images. All those different images, all those different idols, right? And this is exactly what we've done. And all I did was just type idols and images, and all those different things popped up. And this is what happens when we deal with these different spiritualities, and we say, "Oh, well, I'm just being open-minded. I'm just taking a little bit from here. I'm just taking." Well, I like how that sounds. I like how that. What it is fitting us. And what happens is instead of us fitting what God has said, we make God try to fit with how we feel, and that's the error of the way. So this is why he says, and the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord their God. They didn't keep the commandments. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced cities. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and every green tree. And they burnt incense. For those of y'all who y'all burning black love and butt naked and dragon's blood and all these other different incense. Man, the Most High got his own incense he told us to burn to him. What you don't realize is that incense has a connection to all these different spiritualities in these different religions. And even with the Most High, he has his own incense that he says that this is a burnt offering unto me, right? He says, and they burnt incense in the high places, as did the heathen. As did the heathen. We're doing what the heathen did. We're using their incense, and that we're using it the way they used them, right? Whom the Lord carried away before them and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. And this is why we're under the curses of Deuteronomy 28. You can also find some more understanding on those curses in Leviticus chapter 26. Why we're being oppressed and all this other stuff, right? Let's get verse 12. For they served idols. I just showed y'all the idols, whereof the Lord has said unto them, ye shall not do this. Watch, let's keep reading on. Verse 13. Yet the Lord testified against Israel. Who he testified against? Israel. And who? And against Judah by all the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Habakkuk, Daniel, Joel, Haggai, Ezra, Nehemiah, all the prophets, Christ, Moses, all of them, Solomon, everybody, right? All the righteous prophets. He said, what? Yet the Lord testified against Israel. So he came against us by all the prophets. It's the book of the prophets, y'all, right? By all the prophets. And by all his seers, saying, turn ye from your evil ways and keep my commandments. We don't want to do that. We want to do what the other nations do. We want to take a little bit of Islam, a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Catholicism, a little bit of baptism, right? And that's what we do. And when we do that, like I said, I'm going to keep saying it, we are worshiping the gods of those religions. Even if you take a little bit of it, we're worshiping the gods of those religions. He says, turn ye from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law. We got to keep the commandments according to all the law, right? Man, it's so plain. Which I command your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants, the prophets. Notwithstanding, they would their necks like to the neck of their fathers that did not believe in the Lord their God. So when he says harden your necks, what does he mean? He's saying we're being hard-headed, right? Verse 15, and they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers and his testimonies, which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain and went after the heathen that were round about them. And this is what we're doing. We're going after the heathen that's round about us, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Jewish people. Even when you deal with Judaism, yeah, y'all, Judaism too. When I say that we the Hebrew Israelites, when I say that, saying that, go get into Judaism. Judaism is a religion that has a box, and if you want to be part of Judaism, you have to deal with what's in that box and pull everything out of that box and be that. When a lot of times Judaism don't have nothing to do with this, even though this book talk about the Jews. See what I'm saying? This is not a religion. This is your custom. This is your culture. He says the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. We're not supposed to do like the other nations. They're supposed to be following us. We shouldn't be following them. And they left off the commandments. What did they do? Verse 16. And they left off the commandments of the Lord their God and made them molten images, even to calves, and made a grove and worshiped all the host of heaven and served Baal. Now, when it says and made a grove, we don't understand that's nature worship, right? That's nature worship. So nature worship, images, and so on and so forth. Verse 17. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire. This is what we're doing when we teach our children these false doctrines, these wicked religions. We're putting our children through the fire. And use divination and enchantment and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. Drop down to verse 20. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel. And this is why we are in the state that we're in right now. You see that? And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel. We are their seed. This is why we're currently in an oppressed state. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hands of spoilers until he had cast them out of his sight. And this is why we are currently in the state that we are in, you guys. We went after the other nations' God, so now we are oppressed by the other nations. Let's get Acts chapter 17. 17 verse 16. The book of Acts chapter 17 verse 16. Now while Paul waited for them at Athens, Athens is in Greece, right? So Paul, an Israelite of the tribe of Benjamin, this is recorded in the book of Acts. While Paul was waiting in Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. Man, so I know I got a loved one, a couple of loved ones actually, who are in these Greek fraternities, and they get the Greek letters branded on them, not understanding you're doing the ways of the Greeks. The Most High said, don't do after these nations that surround you. But we doing it anyway, right? And why shouldn't we do after the ways of the Greeks? He said, when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. There's idols everywhere, right? Let's read on. Therefore, disputed he in the synagogue with the Jews. So he went to where we would study and where we built that, and he talked to the other Israelites and with the devout persons. And every once in a while, it might be a Greek or a Roman or a Spanish person there. And in the market daily with them that met with him. So he's constantly talking to them like, man, we shouldn't be doing this. This is what he's disputing, right? Verse 18. Then certain philosophers of the Epicureans and of the Stoics encountered him. And some said, what will this babbler say? Others, some, he seemeth to be a setter forth of strange gods, because he preached unto them Jesus and the resurrection. So Paul is trying to give them the law, statutes, commandments. Paul's trying to give them Christ. He's trying to give them faith and grace, right? And they didn't understand because it was not upon their understanding of the gods. Their gods didn't do stuff like this. The Epicureans were different philosophers, right? And the Stoics were another kind of philosopher, different philosophers coming from different things, right? This is the same thing we're dealing with today, and we take these philosophies on. And we believe this stuff, but we don't go see what our Father has to say. The Most High didn't just say, I'm your God. He said, man, I'm your Father. So if our Father is God, then that means we got God in us. That means that at some point we can grow to be something like God. If we decide to just keep the commandments and do what's righteous in his eyes and become that, right? But instead, we keep going after the other nations and their gods and their beliefs. And this is why we're, like I said, we're in the state that we're in. Being open-minded is not us chasing all this stuff. That's confusion, right? Where are we at? Let me see. Verse 19. And they took him and brought him to Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new doctrine whereof thou speakest is? So they took Paul and they said, man, teach us this thing that you're teaching. Commandments, law, statutes, commandments, faith and grace under Christ. What is that? That's what they were acting like, right? Verse 20. For thou bringest certain strange things to our ears. We would not know therefore what these things mean. So they was hearing law, statutes, and commandments and from Moses, and they was like, what are you talking about? And then, you know what, and grace and faith from Christ, what is all this? They didn't understand it because they didn't have that. These are philosophers. They're giving their own understanding, their own ideas, their own belief, right? It's the same thing we do when we being open-minded. Well, I believe this is why I'm open-minded. So I take some of them and I take some of them, right? And that's an error. Verse 21, for all the Athenians, all the Greeks, and strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else. What were they doing with their time? But either to tell or to hear some new thing. And this is what's wrong with us today. We think we know the scripture. We think we know what the Most High said. We think we know what Christ said. And really, we don't. And then when someone is coming to you with the truth, you can't wait to hear some new thing. You can't wait to hear, I know it's brothers out there that's talking about Christ was a vampire. That's the most off the wall foolishness. I know there's brothers out there who claim him to be Christ himself and that everything was a metaphor in the scripture. I'm not fighting it. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just saying that this is what's out there, right? I know it's people out there saying, oh, the scripture was stolen from Egypt. And then several times over, it's been misproven that it's not stolen from Egypt. That's not how that worked, right? Or that about the Anunnaki, and Anunnaki came down and Christ is an angel. And Christ is an alien and all this other stuff. Like, man, listen, y'all, what are y'all talking about? Or people have their own belief, their own philosophy, their own doctrine in which they believe what they think, what they came up with. Or they take a little bit from here, they take a little bit from Islam, a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Hinduism, a little atheism, and they mix it all together and they have their own philosophy, their own belief, their own way of thinking about how this works. And so this is why it says, having spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear some new thing, right? And this is the problem. And this is what our people do right now to this day. They can't wait to hear something new. And it's crazy because it's off. Look what happens. Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars, one of their idols, right? In the midst of Mars's hill, and said, ye men of Athens, you Grecians, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious, man. Y'all believing in what again? That when we die, we're gonna turn into birds or dogs or fish? That don't make no sense. If you got a human spirit and you got a human soul in you, then why would you end up being a fish or a bird? No, that's not how that works, right? No, Christ is not a vampire. That don't make no sense. That's not why he's telling. I know that's what they're gonna say. Well, that's why he said for you to drink his blood. No, that's foolishness. Don't go into that. Or you know what? I'm gonna take Islam and I'm gonna take Hinduism. Those beliefs don't even believe in it. They don't even have agreement in what they believe in. But you're gonna mix those two things together, having some new thing, being too superstitious. And this is what we got to understand. For I, verse 23, as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, and declare I unto you. God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwell not in temples made with hands. So all this understanding, all these churches and synagogues and the mosque and all that, man, the Most High not in there. The scripture says the Most High is in us, right? He's in here. He's in here. So we got to understand that keeping the commandments, being obedient to his word, and will bring it'll manifest. That's why Christ said, if you keep my words, me and the Father will manifest ourselves to you, right? He'll make things plain. He'll make this plain for you to understand and see. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 12. Deuteronomy 12 and 8 one more time, you guys. We got to get that. We got to make sure we understand what we're reading, right? Sometimes repetition is what's needed. Sometimes you got to go back to point A for you to get it. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 8. Ye shall not do after all the things that we do here this day, every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes. You can't do that. We got to leave that alone, you guys. We got to go away from that, right? Let's go to Romans chapter 7. Y'all know what I'm getting. Y'all know your boy Gabar, man. Go to Romans chapter 7, verse 12. Romans chapter 7, verse 12. And it reads, wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and it is just, and it is good. So when we read, and you see the word just, that means fair, okay? That means fair. It is a fair law. And this is why he said we can't do everything that we want to do in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 8. We're not supposed to do that. What are we supposed to do? This holy and just and good commandment and law. Romans 7 and 12. Wherefore the law is holy and the commandment holy and just and good. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? Let's go to Isaiah 55. Why should we be doing that? Why should we be doing the commandments? of the Most High? Why should we be doing the law of the Most High? Watch Isaiah 55, verse 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. Because if we do things our way, we'll be getting away with stuff. We'll be letting homosexuality slide today, and then tomorrow it's a sin. We'll be letting murder get away. We'll be letting murder be okay for this reason or for that reason. We'll see things our way. Maybe it'll be our way and it'll be good to us today, and tomorrow when it works against us, it won't work. And that's double-minded. You can't be like that. We got to maintain the cause, and we got to maintain what's righteous and what's good. And that's why we got to stick with the Most High's commandment, right? As we read in Romans 7 and 12, the law is holy and the commandment is holy and just and good. This is the Most High's way. What is the Most High's way? He says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. So if we keep the Most High's way, we'll be higher than the way that we think. This is what that said. Look, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So he doesn't think the way you think. And your ways, and your ways, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heaven is higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So if we get on the same thought pattern and the same way, same brain frequencies, and we start doing things the same way the Most High wants us to, our thoughts and our ways will be higher if we stay on the same thought and ways that the Most High is than when we are on our own ways. Why? Because we want to do what the heathen do. Bestiality, homosexuality. We want to eat unclean things. It's going to make our health deteriorate. We want to be unjust, which is unfair, right? When it's beneficial to us, and then we want to cry out when it's going against us. This is what's wrong. And this is why we can't be, I'm not saying don't be open-minded to understand someone's point of view, because that's how you get clarity, and this is how you can correct people. Or this is how maybe this is how you get corrected in some ways. But that's open-minded, not you just taking pieces of everyone's spirituality and religion and or culture. That's not what that means. Let's go back to Deuteronomy, man. Y'all know me in Deuteronomy like that. Deuteronomy chapter 4. Watch this. We got to stay in his ways. Why do we want to stay in his ways? Watch this. Behold, this is Deuteronomy chapter 4. I'm sorry, verse 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgment, even as the Lord my God commanded me. So this is Moses talking to us. He taught us the statutes. Statutes is the stipulations on how to keep the law, with how to deal with it when someone breaks the law, right? How to deal with it when someone breaks the commandments. That's what a statute is. And judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do so in the land whether you go to possess it. This is what I really want in verse 6. Keep therefore and do them. So keep the commandment, keep the statutes, and keep the judgments, keep the law and do them. Why should we do that, Father? For this is your wisdom and your understanding. So this is wisdom and understanding if we keep the law, statutes, and commandments. This is wisdom and understanding when we keep the law, statutes, and commandments. Look, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this is a great nation. This great nation is wise and is a wise and understanding people. If we keep the commandment, the law, statutes, commandments, they will see that we are wise and understanding because we kept that. They will see it. They will acknowledge it. But when they see us following them, they don't look at us. They don't look at it the same. When they see us following their commandments and being open-minded to their gods and their religion and their belief and their ways, they don't see us as wise and understanding. They see us as followers, as sheep. They see us as the people that they're going to oppress and down press and rule over, right? This is why they are teachers today. But they're not supposed to be our teachers, right? We're supposed to be the leaders. They're supposed to be the followers. So if we keep the commandments, let me get that one more time. Deuteronomy chapter 4, I'm going to start at verse 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me. So statutes, judgments, command, that you should do in the land whether you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them. Keep and do what? This is the law, statutes, and commandments. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom. The law, statutes, and commandments is our wisdom and our understanding. This is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. When the other nations see us, they will see a wise and understanding people when we keep those commandments. Which shall say, which shall, excuse me, which shall hear all these statutes. When the other nations hear our law, statutes, and commandments, what will they say? And say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. This is why we got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments, you guys. This is imperative. Being open-minded has not worked out the best for us. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 9. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth. So, some the loved one who inspired me to make this lesson, he's a young dude, He says, rejoice, young man, in thy youth. So yeah, you're young. You don't know no better sometime, right? And let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth. Be happy and enjoy being young. And walk in the ways of thine heart and in the sight of thine eyes. So you can do that if that's what you want to do. Be young and be young and foolish and dumb. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm saying it like when you're young, you make a lot of young mistakes. You make young decisions, right? Your judgment is from a young person's standpoint. That's me being open-minded and understanding, right? That's not me following them. That's how I can say that. They're being young and they're making young decisions. They're making young, stupid decisions, young-minded decisions, young-minded judgments, right? He says, rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. Thou, therefore, all God will bring judgment. So understand that there is a punishment that's coming for us. So when you think you're going to mix all these things together, or you're going to live life for what it is because your philosophy has said such, like we read in Acts, those philosophers, he says that judgment is going to come to you. Excuse me. We just read where in Deuteronomy 4, where he said that the commandment is our wisdom and understanding. Right? So when you being young and you're going to do it your way, that's fine. Just understand. You want to be young and you want to take a little bit here, a little bit there. You want to be open-minded. That's fine. But understand that a judgment comes along with that. Okay. Let's get Romans chapter 2. We're almost done, y'all. Romans 2. Romans chapter 2, I'm starting at verse 13. Romans chapter 2, verse 13. For not the hearer of the law is just before God, but the doer of the law it shall be justified. So I know that a lot of times we say, well, I know the Bible. I heard this. I read the Bible all the time. You might read it. You might have heard it. You might know it, but it's not those who read, heard, and know. It's the doers of the law that shall be justified. So we got to do the law. We got to do these commandments, right? And that's how we're justified in the eyes of the Most High. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, because the heathen nations have commandments, they don't have the law of Moses, but what? Watch. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves. They don't have the law of Moses, but what do they have? They have don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, right? Honor your father and mother. They have those things. So they don't have the law of Moses, but they have those elements of it, right? They're a law unto themselves. And this is this is where they start saying, well, this is what's right, because I don't kill, I don't steal from nobody. And yeah, no, you're right. Those things that's righteous that you don't do those things. But what? He says, which show the work of the law written in their hearts. It shows that you have some righteousness in you, sure. But what happens? Their conscience, your mind, also bearing witness. So you also bear witness to what you're doing. Because what happens? And their thoughts, the meanwhile, accusing or else excusing one another. So when you have elements of the law by these other beliefs, when you decide to take Islam and Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and atheism. You take all the different things and you say, well, I'm open-minded, so I just take stuff from all these other things. In your mind, you then what? It says their conscience bearing witness, doing what? Accusing. So that person, today, that person wrong. No, that dude wrong. He was sleeping with his wife. But then you excuse yourself when you do something similar to it, right? You're not consistent with your righteousness, man. And this is what happens when you mix all these beliefs together. But just because you have elements of what the scripture says, this is why people say, see, Islam and the Bible is the same. No, it ain't. Oh, Buddha and Jesus, they were the same. No, they weren't. Krishna and Christ, they were the same. No, they weren't. These are different. These are the nation. These are the gods of the nations that are round about us that the Most High said we're not supposed to deal with them. Who's around us? The Arabs. Who's around us? The Asians. Who's around us? The Africans. Who's around us? White folks. All these different spiritualities and beliefs. These are their gods. And so when you take this and that, your mind ends up bearing witness against you, accusing you of this, accusing other people of this, and excusing yourself of the same thing. All while having things that are in the law, even though you don't have the law, you have things of the law like don't steal, don't kill, so on and so forth, right? But you can accuse this person of wickedness and then excuse yourself of that same wickedness because your belief or your philosophy says it's okay. Come on, man. Being open-minded is not that. That's being double-minded, right? Let's get Acts chapter 5. It's one of my favorites. I don't pull it out often, but I love it. It's very potent. Acts chapter 5, verse 29 says, then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men, rather than, in these different philosophies and ideologies and these beliefs and these religions, because all that stuff has come from men, not from the Most High God, right? Let's go, stay in Acts, let's go to 4:19. Let's get a supporting verse. But Peter and John answered and said unto them, whether it be right in the sight of God to hearken unto you more than unto God, you judge. So should I listen to you or should I listen to this is what the scripture is saying. Should I listen to you or should I listen to God? You tell me that. Simple and plain. We should listen to God. And God said, don't deal with the gods of the people that are around about you. Don't deal with the African gods. Don't deal with the Asians God. Don't deal with the white folk God. Don't deal with atheism. Don't deal with their philosophies and ideologies, right? He said, don't deal with those gods, but we need to deal with these commandments. He said, it's going to be our wisdom and our understanding. Wisdom and understanding, making rash decision, using knowledge, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. Let's get my last one, Matthew chapter 7. Matthew 7 and 13. Matthew 7, verse 13. What did Christ say? And I started off using it, hitting you from a different angle, but it's the same thing. I started off with 2nd Ezra chapter 7, verse 6 through 21. And really, Christ is actually kind of saying, he's kind of paraphrasing the same thing. Watch. Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. Enter ye in at the straight gate. Remember, I said, what is the commandment? Commandment is the straight. He gave us straight commandments. That's in 2nd Ezra chapter 7, verse 20 and 21. He gave us straight commandments. So what is he says? Enter ye in at the straight gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that lead to destruction. Man, this is when you're open-minded. You could take all of that in. It's broad and it's wide. You can put everything on your plate, right? But that leads to destruction. It leads us down the wrong way. Being open-minded the way my loved one is referring to it, that's wrong. That's wrong. Being open-minded the way my loved one referred to it is wrong. Okay, because that's broad and that's broad. That's the gate being broad that leads to destruction. It says, "Enter ye in at the straight gate, for broad is the gate." Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that lead to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because Straight is the gate and narrow is the way which lead into life, and few there be that find it. Because everybody wants to do it their way. They want to make God fit them, but they don't want to fit God. They want to make God, they want to pick what they choose from the scripture and say, yeah, well, I'll obey that and I listen to that. But then they don't want to obey the rest of the commandment when it tells them to not be promiscuous and sleep around with everybody, when it tells them that they need to keep the Sabbath day, when it tells them that they need to eat clean, when it tells them to celebrate the holidays that God said to celebrate. That's when they don't want to do that. They want to go to the wide and broad path which says, hey, you know what? When you're a Hindu, they don't care that you celebrate Christmas. When you're a Buddhist, they don't care that you celebrate Easter. They don't care about those things. They let you celebrate all that along with Hinduism and Buddhism, right? So all these different religions, when you start to pick and choose all that different stuff, all that stuff come together and they say you can be all those things, right? But look what Christ said in verse 14 says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way. Like we read in 2nd Ezra chapter 7, where he said that path is so narrow that only one person can walk at a time. He said, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which lead into life, and few there be that find it, because most people don't want to do what the Most High says to do. They don't want to follow his commandment, even though it's going to be your wisdom and understanding, right? Keeping the commandments are wisdom and understanding. Let me get one more verse, you guys. One more, I promise. James chapter 1, verse 8. Because while you being open-minded, you're not being open-minded. What you're being is double-minded. Watch this. James chapter 1, verse 8. I'm going to start at verse 6. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea driven from the wind and tossed. So, man, when you don't have no faith in the Most High, when you're not grounded in this, you're tossed like a wave. You know, imagine a beach ball being in the ocean during a storm, and it's just being thrown all around, right? That's who you are. You being open-minded to everybody's spirituality, even though they don't even mix together, that don't make no sense, right? You being tossed to and fro. He says, but let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of sea driven with the wind and tossed. And let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. Why? Because verse 8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So we have to understand that you can't just be double-minded. You can't take Islam and Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and atheists and be an Israelite at the same time. You can't be open-minded, because wide and broad is the way that lead to destruction. Of course, that's all I got for y'all today. So of course, I pray that this planted the seed or tilled the ground or watered the plant. But of course, we know that the Most High give the increase. I give all honor and praise and glory to the Most High and none for myself, y'all. With that, I'm Brother Kabar. This is Intelligent Hebrew. Peace. Shalom.